Welcome to Third Coast Disrupted, Artists and Scientists on Climate. The exhibition culminates a year-long conversation between artists and scientists centered on climate change impacts and solutions happening in the Chicago region. The artist-scientist dialogue kicked off at a day-long retreat at Indiana Dunes National Park. It continued through a series of 4 artist-scientist salons and through additional one-on-one pursuits. Let's take a look at the artworks those conversations inspired. Albedo by Jeremy Bolin memorializes the 41 unclaimed bodies from among the 700-plus residents who perished in the 1995 Chicago heat wave. The sculpture outlines 41 caskets that are coated in light-reflecting roofing granules. Used to cool buildings, the granules turn the memorial into a hopeful heat and light-reflecting cabinet. Since the 41 victims lived and died in Chicago, yet were buried in a mass grave in suburban Homewood, Bolin scattered soil from Chicago on the base of the work. That base is a layer of radiant barrier insulation, another easily accessible material that can help cool buildings. Many who died in the heat wave were poor, elderly residents, sequestered alone without air conditioning. Brightly painted doorbells remind us that reaching out to others in a crisis can save lives. The work highlights speculative possibilities for reducing the severity of and adapting to our changing climate. Among them, humidifiers that reference work by an Oak Ridge National Lab scientist that adapts common humidifiers to absorb atmospheric carbon. Replicas made of carbon-cure concrete, which permanently embeds captured carbon, are a tombstone-like memorial and hopeful gesture. On either side of the work are 2 desiccator dry boxes, each containing a brick made of carbon cure. Typically used in labs, the boxes stress the experimental nature of some of the mitigation measures and that more work needs to be done. Breathing to the Next Breath by N. Mashani Landfair delves into the mental and physical tolls of living in a chronically flooded home on Chicago's South Side, an example of a community of color especially hard hit from the more intense rainstorms that climate change has brought to the region. The work consists of 3 found object collages on found, water-damaged wooden boards. Around them, imagery of mold. For the first panel, photos of the artist's flooded basement, cut up and reassembled, follow the water stain on the wood. The convoluted form references the growth of black mold in the walls of the artist's home. Next, an exploration of Landfair's efforts to heal after prolonged mold exposure. Medical tape helps create the white clinical effect, as does the red line representing lifeblood. Still, reminders of mold persist. Finally, a meditation on acceptance, centering on a photo of the artist's underwater basement floor reflecting a sunlit basement window. There is more lifeblood, and yet more mold, too. Throughout the work, regular markings appear in the background, suggesting the rhythm of breathing. Parts per Million Planetary Aspirations by Andrew S. Yang uses 1 million dots silkscreened onto paper to visualize the invisible threat of carbon dioxide, or CO2, in our atmosphere, the cloud-like effect, a way to see the atmosphere itself. Though a relatively small amount, 415 CO2 molecules per 1 million air molecules, it has an outsized effect on our climate and life on Earth. It is the most CO2 in our atmosphere since the dawn of human civilization, and it's driven largely by our burning of fossil fuels. The work suggests reams of data unfurled on the wall. It also uses a variety of graph papers, the circular ones used in practice to record daily temperatures. On the pedestal is a lab book depicting the 415 seemingly insignificant yet enormously consequential CO2 molecules. The scroll of blank tracing paper represents the unoccupied space, the CO2 we have not yet emitted into the atmosphere and hopefully will not. Meredith Likes Chicago in the Rain comprises watercolor paintings and an animated video telling the story of an inundated region brought by climate change. Forced by the pandemic to rethink her plan to physically visit local sites for inspiration, Like decided to depict the area's drenched reality through news articles that turned up from web searches, giving them a rain-soaked twist. The video further animates the articles, like this one about the limitations of the Deep Tunnel project, in which the artist creates the effect of the tunnel rapidly filling. There's actual precipitation data. And paintings inspired by photos, like what the artist calls Rainy Day by the Stock Exchange in Lincolnwood Garage sandbags. There's even a painting of the flooded basement of fellow artist N. Mashani Landfair. Then there's gondolas on Michigan Avenue, using a fantastical, lighthearted touch to draw the viewer into a sobering topic. The paintings also explore a more porous landscape that uses nature to absorb stormwater and reduce flooding, solutions increasingly used in the region. With plastic embedded into the organic forms of Barbara Cooper's Seep, the sculptors examined the escalating use of plastic, 22 million pounds of which entered the Great Lakes annually, and the pervasive trail it leaves through Earth's ecosystems. The work draws attention to Earth's ability, or lack thereof, to process these and other human interventions, making the environment less resilient to the impacts of climate change. Every step of the life cycle of plastic emits greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming. Cooper made the forms by manipulating screening and found plastic water bottles, a process that mirrors how plastics in daily life become implanted into the organic world. The work references the body systems that absorb food, water, and air, all of which harbor microplastics. Microplastics are so embedded in our life support systems as to be inseparable from them, says the artist. There's hope, though. A few short years after high concentrations of plastic microbeads, once common in personal care products, were found in the Great Lakes, they were banned in the U.S. More is possible. Homero Gonzalez and Raul Romero worked tirelessly to protect monarch butterflies in Michoacan, Mexico. They were murdered in 2019. Hector Duarte's Requiem for Two Spirits, Defenders of the Migrant Butterflies, honors them. The giant chrysalis, lit by black light, is open as if a butterfly will emerge. Monarch wings painted on the outside make the chrysalis seem transparent, as if the butterfly's unfolding is imminent. Inside, portraits of Romero and Gonzalez. Above them, streamers and a soaring spiral, suggesting the ascension of the men's spirits and a portal to the next dimension. The work calls us to rebuild monarch populations, whose threats are magnified by climate change, by restoring their summer habitat in the Chicago area. It's as easy as planting milkweed, like these that the artist invites visitors to take. There are also marigolds, a plant associated with the Mexican Day of the Dead. Many in Michoacan believe that when monarchs return to Mexico, which coincides with the Day of the Dead, they bring the spirits of departed loved ones. River of Shadows, Liquidation, and Remanent are a trio of works by Rosemary Holiday Hall examining the central role of water in climate change. River of Shadows is a video exploring surface tension of water as a metaphor for reaching the moment of capacity. The artist hones in on when the bubble will burst, both economically and atmospherically, as rising temperatures cause the atmosphere to hold more water until it unleashes more intense precipitation and flooding, as is happening in the Chicago region. Liquidation uses pennies flattened and curved into tiny cups that hold porcelain casts of plant fragments to raise questions about what we value, and perhaps what we should value instead. The casts are of plants the artist found growing through cracks in streets and sidewalks, resistors puncturing the surface tension of impermeability. The casts also reference the making of death masks as a way to hold detailed memory of the departed. Remanent consists of seed packets of water-absorbing plants, which the artist invites visitors to take and plant to help Chicago return to its more permeable roots. You might ask, what can I do about climate change? Talk about it. Climate action begins with conversation. See simple tips for getting started at thirdcoastdisrupted.org.